You know, essentially, how do we empower ourselves?
The mystic doesn't have a problem. Problems are for other people. The mystic does not have a problem, and he will need to, if he's trying to meet people halfway and transmit that fact, yeah, he can do it in a multiplicity of different ways, because he's, remember, Odin is in some sense also the trickster, right? So the great sages are in one sense also tricksters, and that's a persona that they don because they have to engage with people who are very, very estranged from the truth, you know. And so what happens there at that point is that you have to communicate with the person by sort of going back to basics, you know, taking them back to a place of grounding first, because if they're scattered, they can't hear you in the first place, right? And so there's a calming effect by being around sage-like people, you know, and the things that they do. And what they're trying to do is remind you of the sage within, right? Remind you of your own inherent heroism and strength, you know. And there's an old statement that goes, if you find yourself under attack from very powerful forces, it means that they're seeking you out because you're more powerful than them. Your enemy and the magnitude of that enemy is the mirror to who you are, right? And you just, that's a whole different, you know, component. When it comes to what did you allude to there? Oh yeah, the pedophilia. The question I have on that is that can never be stopped. So I don't think anything that's happening has to do with that. A lot of protestations are made, you know, for that script that's been written for the TV fiasco we've got going on. Never on this planet will ever that stop. It has not stopped since ancient times. You can go back to the bloody Canaanites, whoever, and it certainly won't make a dent of difference now, no matter how many priests, dirty old men that you arrest. This thing, you know, all of the different, for people who know the bigger body of my work, they know that a group called the Black Nobility, which includes a lot of the world's royalty, not all, but most, and includes the College of Cardinals and all of that. That group has been vampiristic, blood-sucking, and child molesting from the year dot. And in fact, you know, as you well know, that's a kind of a satanic ritualistic thing that rules the world. And it's one of the things that the elite use to even seduce the lower henchmen, you see. So you're never going to get beyond that glass ceiling to stop it, which is abysmal to be able to say, but anyone who's really studied the subject, you know, will finally have to concede that fact. All that you'll have is a sort of a Jeffrey Epstein lower level debacle. That is it. It's not going to go any higher because it cannot go any higher. You know, a couple of dirty old men, yeah, okay, you know, they made it, so they were sacrificed, you know, because they're going to be sacrificed because they made it too obvious to the public what they were doing. So that's already breaching, you know, the code. There are already people that will be penalized because they made it too obvious what they were up to. And so they'll suffer, you know, penalization from upstairs. So that is canceled because anything to do with that kind of thing is so quiet, right? That on no account would anything be happening in the governmental movement that would draw attention to it. Because one, that attention will not work. It'll only do a small cleanup. And secondly, that level of conspiracy has always benefited from absolutely keeping people in the not know, keeping them dull like sheep, right? So the conspiracy works in grades. So if you see any shuffling or hustling and bustling and loud histrionics and clashing of cymbals and banging of drums, that's going to be short-lived and will finally fade away, because the greatest conspiratorial devices, machinations of the truly Faustian and Machiavellian way have happened when we're asleep. That's their history. That's true conspiracy. And they'll never change that formula. They will never reinvent that wheel. They'll never want, so this can happen. It doesn't rule out a more of a histrionic thing happening, you know, in the timeline. Certainly, we've had world wars, as I said, but still, even given the furore of it, and, you know, the spectacle of it, the extravaganzas that they often throw, the real conspiracy moves on like the, you know, Tolkien's fucking riders through this town, man. You don't even know they're there. Even when you're looking at one, you can't see it. Yeah, it's too sophisticated. It's too quiet, right? It's got you mesmerized. Right? You even look at it and you see something you see angels where devils are, right? That's how powerful that shit is. And the kind of, you know, the kind of ability to see in the dark there, the world doesn't have. They're completely sacrosanct, because the kind of wisdom that you'd need is so great that you'd have probably already come up against them in that pursuit, and they'd have already taken you down. Right? So that's canceled. When you really know the depth of it, nothing that happens on the the sort of the foreground of the picture, so to speak, has that much relevance, even when it can be quite like good. Like, hey, the guy's actually telling you he's an insider, or he blew the whistle. Yeah, but even with all of that, it doesn't really make the dent that it should further up, because the whole world system from the time of this BC period has been set up so that it can't. They use that bloody pyramid for a reason. You ain't getting upstairs, mate. There's no gate crashing there, no matter what you put together. There's no getting past that ceiling that they put up, no matter how many Uzis you got. It's just not possible. They got too many tiers, and some of them are completely impassable. But that doesn't make you inactive and say that, no, well, then on the tier that I do exist, I'll bloody make change, all right. Well, that's what I'm talking about, heroism. But at the same time, temper it by knowing, yeah, it still didn't make a dent. They pulled up the ladder. They can restructure the whole of the world's order, but they won't do it because incrementally it's taken so many billions and so much energy of their own people to get to where we are now. They're going to preserve that status quo. You've got to think as they think. So all of this extravaganza, right, and furore, that is temporary and will soon fold up, because the greatest triumphs that they've ever got, the greatest victories that they can rack up to their name, have been done with our complicity or our ignorance of the matter.
Yeah. Wow.
But write it down. Take 100 lines. The mystic has no problem.
The mystic has no problem.
Put that over your bed, people listening to us.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way to temper this and to kind of get into the conclusion here of this conversation. And I know we hopped around a lot, and I definitely, I feel like, you mentioned something about scatteredness, and I don't know exactly how, and I'll just be really transparent in this moment, especially with this conversation, because I didn't have everything planned out. I knew that we were going to hop on and just kind of get into things as we have. And I appreciate your level of clarity, because a lot of these concepts, I've been swimming in the swimming pool. I've been swimming through the fish tank, moving through some of this. So I don't know if any of my communication has been a little unfocused or scattered, but I definitely kind of leaned on you. And that's why I had you come on to kind of recapitulate and refocus some of these ideas that I've been trying to kind of trying to structure so I could see clearly. And one of the things you just mentioned now is in support of that, which is, what can you do? Like, once you have all this information and all these different perspectives, what is my work to do ultimately? That's what I want to maybe encourage all of us to find in this conversation. What is my work to do? And I think that's the conversation we should have been having before this. And it's certainly the conversation we should be having now, which is, with all this distraction going on and abstraction going on, what is my work to do?
Well, nobody can tell another what that is. For me, it's do nothing. For me, it's just do nothing. Yeah. Remain stoical. See, everybody's doing too much. That's the whole point I'm making.
Got it. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, when I said that thing about mystics not having a problem, do not translate that as if now he's a psychopath who couldn't care, because psychopaths have no problem. We've done programs on sage and psychopath where we've shown the connections, but I just want to make that one point. That does not give people then the idea that a mystic is utterly careless of his environment, right? He's still very much part of the Mitwelt. He certainly has a responsibility to that Mitwelt. So I heard how people might be hearing that and say, oh, well then good. Yeah, that's good for me because I can get along, I'll still keep on watching my soaps. I don't have a problem either. That's not what I mean. This is it's a very deep empathic state, actually. But, we'll have to, that's a hard thing to prove. But again, just let the thought sit in and contemplate it oneself without a lot of noise from Michael and everybody else. The mystic has no problem, right? That is a very, very high level of empathic understanding, which also runs parallel with a kind of deep stoicism and deep detachment. So it's a meditation, and it will take time for that to sink in. But the doing can also be the Alice in Wonderland's kitchen. They're all doing. throwing around the salt and the pepper,
Totally.
screaming at each other, banging the plates. How do you think the meal's going to come out? That's done by doing. There's a moment in life, also socially, because the Saturn in the Aquarius could be that. There's different other, astrological phenomena that can definitely indicate that. Retrograde could indicate that. But in general, I think that the doing is too much. We're overdoers in this moment. And so there's a new meditation, which is, like Bruce Lee once said, I prepare every morning, like a student at his first class, I prepare a blank mind for the day to write upon. If only, right, we would be guided by that, right, and come back into deep presence, deep relationship with our own pain, as we've discussed, in which you let it be a guide and a tutor, where you do learn from the falling leaf, right, and you become very phenomenologically present. That's kind of a grounding that is needed, and in that, what happens is, when I say that the mystic has no problem, it's because he is so fortified in himself, he is so grounded in himself, and he can call on his daemons and his angels to take the problem from him, to contextualize it, right? He's in touch with the core of the earth. So he has no problem, because how could a man of that great strength have a problem? He can be in a dungeon for 18 years, strapped to a wall. He still has no problem, right? Read Byron's Prisoner of Chillon, right? The poem. There's a different transcendental letting go, which involves not having the problem, which is a mystical process. It's not a psychopath going, well, sure, I've never had a problem because I don't give a fuck about anybody else. I have no care anyway. Let it all happen. I'm all right, Jack. That's not what I mean. Yep. There's millions of people like that, right? In fact, many could argue that our whole our whole society has psychopathic traits. Well, these leftists you've been talking about, the loony left, you're getting warm there, all right. Kerry Bolton calls him the psychotic left, and he's totally right. So this kind of comportment that I'm talking about is born in deep fortitude. It's granite, because you're standing there with some heavy duty power that you've awakened, and that is that you're working with. And in that, it's like a bird on a tree with a tiny little grain in its mouth, and it drops and it falls into the ocean, right? Yeah, the mystic has no problem, because he doesn't see himself, right, as a drop in that ocean. He sees the reverse, that he's an ocean in a drop. And his daily meditation is then to become completely aware of that. Then he's got his function and his role in the Mitwelt, right? Because we're Eigenwelt, self, Umwelt, nature, Mitwelt, society. Mitwelt being with others. And in the with world, the mit sign, right? In my duty towards other people, I've acknowledged that. And so I'm this person for a while. And I develop these skills for a while, but my hold upon them is extremely light, right? I can drop it at any time. And I can, and by dropping it, I return, right, to the still point. And the person who is in touch with that still point, you see, cannot be wavered. It doesn't mean that bad things don't happen to him. Like I said, they could end up boiling you in fucking oil, but they haven't really taken away your essence. And you're processing your shadow, right? Because the body is very much a part of this process as well, right? Because it's one of the things that you're learning from, not just the falling leaf and the beautiful sound of the water. That's all important, but the sound in here, right? There's a sound in here, a voice, an intelligible voice within your own being, speaking to you on a daily basis and offering you that power, not just the muscular power of physical strength, but energetic, bioenergetic strength that the martial artist is working with, the chi or the ki, the prana, the bioenergy, whatever way it works for you to understand. Spiritus, as a matter of fact. So the language besides, there is a deeper intelligence, and we're not connected to that. And that's what our big brother knows. As I've been saying for years, the fact that they know how weak we are, how ungrounded we are, right, how little we know about our biopsyche, the more they can disembobble, they can pull the thread, and all the beads just run around the table. But the person who's got it, right, and who stays within the center and cultivates that and is aware of what his inner voice is saying, you see, his somatic intelligence is awakened. That person is very far from somebody who can be messed with on that level. That's a brilliant point. And man, I could go on another hour or two with you easily, especially now it's opened up a whole new set of Pandora's box into human potential, really, because like ultimately
and when I say this situation, I don't mean this literal situation. I mean this situation, like the big, that's been unending since the beginning, whether it was the Titanic or before that, since the inception of our country, world history, Operation Paperclip, which you kind of alluded to, right? The whole idea that this is, secret forces or secret agents from different governments shifted over to ours that infiltrated, and I'll let people do their own research. But the point of the matter is, we've had controlled opposition to our human potential from day one. And I think there's actually a necessity there from a maybe a cosmological or a spiritual perspective, maybe a God's eye view perspective, because the humans in the ant farm, we can't see, the caterpillar can't envision what the butterfly sees. But if we can get that higher vantage point and perspective, maybe we can see the implicate perfection within the conspiracy, within the drama, within the friction. So when we're experiencing the dynamic tension or the dynamic instability, we don't freak out. We don't jump on these rabbit hole perspectives that are going doom and gloom or black and white. We actually have a balanced perspective and can see kind of like, hey, there's post-traumatic stress, but there's also post-traumatic growth, right? How do you create a diamond? How do we actually, my experience has been, yeah, I can voluntarily put myself through resistance and I'm going to grow just like I work out. But it does seem like in life, the times that I've grown the most and evolved the most is when my back was up against the wall, when I had to figure the damn thing out, when my plan wasn't working anymore and it was breaking down and I had to figure out a new plan on the spot. Those seem to be the times where I've grown the most. And apparently spirituality is all about growth, right? It's not about convenience. It's not about just sitting and meditating all day long and just being comfortable and convenient. Everyone keeps telling me that the point of spirituality is about growth and evolution. So maybe there is a point to all of this beyond my own personal preference.
Well, you see, there's always, by being a human being, we have empathy, right? And empathy does reach out naturally. It's called intentionality in philosophy. It's slightly different than the word we mean, because when we say intention, we mean it's a very conscious thing. Intentionality is just body language, tone of voice, eye contact. It's the normal leaning out toward other people. But existentially, what has happened is we have taken refuge in it to escape the voice of the self, right? This is the equation. And as I said, since it's a contract we make with ourselves, we then forget about it and forget we forgot about it. Total dissociation. So when people like myself mention this time and time again, I know that it'll take many years for people to even get the first toehold in what, even those who say, I got it. I'm not stupid. I got it. No, you fucking haven't. And I know that. So you have to reiterate, right? So I just keep it harping, drip feed until, and times like this actually assist, in which people start to realize, like I said, that which was, screamed from the back of the pack now moves up a bit. And people get to grips with these simple truths, you see, and simple U-turns in your own personal life, reorientating back to what you really believe, a bit of centroversion, a bit of introversion, can really make large scale differences in your perspectives, in how you work with other people, how you let them intrude into your existence, right? How you call a spade, and even in career, it will definitely, affect you on multiple levels. And all for the good. So what you've got to do is realize that you are in a living environment. Your world, your cosmos is living. It has your best interests at heart. It never throws you challenges that you cannot overcome, right? And that you have now to get into a different relationship with that, right? There is difficulty doing that. There's millions of escapes, like running to the guru's feet, following the bloody path, or, and all that nonsense. But there are other ways, because in all encounters with those people, you are still part of that encounter. The selfie has been taken from, as you say, the God eye point of view, right? But what we have forgotten in the West is to that level of self-reference. And then unfortunately, when we have it, it's mostly a narcissistic one. Look at me, and all, it all went wrong. You know, there's plenty of self-referencing, but it's of the persona, it's of the social persona, it's exhibitionism, it's I'm the guru, or I'm next to the guru, and all this nonsense. Right? Or it's a service to, I don't think of myself, I think of the public and the good and all. So it's gone wrong because it's not the true self, right? The emotional plague has got in between that, and you're trying to embolden and window dress this corpse. That's what corporation, it means a dead thing. And we operate in the world as dead things, not as living, vital things.
Yeah.
You know, and as you're quite right, you know, there's more to expound upon this. We do it in the podcasts.
Yeah.
You know, we'll have to have you on real soon. As a matter of fact, if you're
do it.
open to that, Enslaved, we could go over these matters, because
absolutely.
This is the kind of thing I really actually prefer to talk about. I know you talk about some of the unstructuredness of it, but see, I actually prefer this because my other work is so structured. Structured what we do on Enslaved, and that's great, and has to be, because we're doing top drawer stuff there. But you know, this is actually my favorite kind of, you know, my preferred, you know, way of doing things, actually. But we'll definitely have to have you on, Ronnie. So much thank you for this as well, this opportunity.
Oh, I mean, my pleasure. I mean, just total honor and gratitude for you. And as you know, before we first started connecting a while back and started doing those interviews, and I had really gone deep into your work. I was going through a lot of that underworld, and you know, contending with spiritual matters that weren't well explained to me, or I wasn't really well prepared for, or at least maybe I had a sense of, but I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have a manual to go through those depressive, existential crisis points. And I think a lot of people are going through that, and particularly the millennial generation, which is a topic in of itself. And I think your work really serves to put pieces together and give a language to experiences and phenomena that has been either politicized, it's been shoved under the rug, it's been given some kind of maybe new age spin on it, which can be helpful temporarily to give you some kind of reprieve, like, oh, okay, like there's something beyond the veil, thank God, because I thought I was going crazy. So at least there's something there. But then when the person wants to go deeper, there's not a lot there other than, like, you know, just be here now, be present, be here now. It's like, well, fuck, man, I'm here, and right here feels a lot like hell, and I'm trying to get over there, and they're telling me heaven's over there. And, you know, so we have these weird kind of ideas that we're trying to break apart to get to the truth. And when I say the truth, I mean practical. Like, what can I do with this thing to actually make my life better? And I think your work has really been one of the foundations and the hallmarks of that in the world of psychology, in the world of philosophy, in the world of the truth movement, making truth practical. And the last thing I want to say, and I didn't bring this up before, but one thing I think this is appropriate to mention, is that your work is a very interesting, it's like you're doing the subtle art of communicating truth without spreading fear. That came up for me yesterday, and I had meant to actually make that a theme, but I think I just want to communicate that before we close out. There's a subtle art to communicating truth without spreading fear, right? Because most of the truth, like whether it's the Alex Jones variety or the David Icke variety, and it's all good. However, there's a carrier wave, there's a vibration that gets carried, particularly through Alex Jones. I mean, you know, that's just his, you know, when you look at a character like that, you also have to take into account the physiology and the body mechanics and the health and those things. Have we put that together? Maybe not. You know, holistic perspective. I think you, better than most, if not anyone, are able to communicate clearly truth without spreading the fear virus. It's almost like when I hear you, I've heard very uncomfortable truths, but I felt comforted by the truth, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's definitely not popular, you know, because again of that quick fix thing.
Yeah.
I don't have any solutions like that. I don't have quick fixes. They're all something that will take a lifetime. It's like my lifetime has gone into studying these things. And I've had to be reconciled to the fact that it is a very slow process. Even one of these things that we're looking at is itself pretty much a lifetime of persistent, consistent study, right? And rumination. And I've had to, you know, commit to that and make sure that those distractions were minimized
Mm.
to get what I have to say, and all of that. So yeah, it's not a quick fix. It's not a spinner rack. It's constant polishing. It's constant putting it down again, stepping back, walking around it, rejecting it. You see, and I'm used to that process now. I'm used to what it takes to have this apophatic approach. Not screaming through any megaphones or bashing any tables.
Right.
It's a discussion. It's just like, it's a discussion.
Yeah.
In which everything I know could be wrong. And that's also very frightening. So there is a fear, but it's a healthy fear. It's a white fear. It's a fear in which it's also can release you, because if you're holding the reins very lightly, but you have a great deal of passion, you leave the door open for the other voice to come through, because there's nothing that you're iterating, right, that the other person doesn't ultimately know or intuit inside.
Yeah.
And so what you're really doing is midwifing the truth forth, right? It doesn't have your signature on it. There's definitely admixture of one's own consciousness and one's own thought, but we stand on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah, totally.
And my God, that'll humble you, and that's why I love delving into the works of great giants. I love it. I will never stop doing it. A lot of my books are dedicated to the great men and women, you see, who inspired me. So yeah, there's that mixture of my own thought and quite a lot of it. But the thing is that I would never have got there, would I, if I hadn't dedicated the time? And because I really love this work and I'm passionate about it, I'll give those other writers and give those other thinkers the time that they deserve. Right? I won't just leaf through it, pick out some parts because this makes me look good. Which is a lot of people are doing. It will be far more empathic, far more sincere. And I think people, the people we have as members and everything, and through the years, they are the sincere ones, and they love what they're getting. So, but it never ceases being an adventure to me. It never ceases being something that I'm always in a learning process with, because there is so much to learn. But never learn it in a way that is coming from a feeling of lack, right? A feeling of disrespect, irreverence, or fear. That will lead you nowhere. That will lead you to psychosis. Most of the people I've known in my life, who I would have said accompanied me on this road, so to speak, have gone off the edge. I watched them melt down year after year after year after year. They start as one thing and they end up something completely different, right?
Yep. I've seen that just in I've seen that just in the food world, the nutrition diet world, because you're dealing with ideologies, and the ideology can become somebody's identity very quickly. That's the whole thing in itself. But I've seen that same thing play out. So I can only imagine in your world, in the swimming pool you've been swimming in all these years, how much more intense that can get.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I would say I've known about at least 7 full-blown psychopaths. Can you believe that? That's not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
And since they now know that there's semi-psychopaths out there, and then quarter versions, it's actually larger the numbers than we've been told before. It's actually quite a lot, and so you run into them. So I've run into that, and I've run into, people who flaked, who couldn't handle it. And that's the story of my life, actually, so. But I've persisted and continued because I locked myself onto that history elephant, that all the solutions are there, all the thoughts have been thought already, all the solutions have been given, and it's our job to act as kind of librarians or custodians, like preserving it, laying it out in the museum, and having it available. That's all I do. I'm creating a museum of displays, so people walk in, and say, okay, my God, look at this, and they're now. People that never have heard of. See, our society's made it that you cannot hear of most of these people. But with the benefit of social media and the internet, we've gone for it. We've gone for it to a very, very, very elaborate, preconceived, methodical, and my work shines with that. People can see it's sincere. And that's all I ask is they do. And then it might inspire them to carry it on,
Yeah, I mean, beautifully expressed and shared. And yeah, I mean, what can I say? Well, what I will say as we conclude is that If you, for all of you listening, if you're not aware, Michael co-hosts an incredible podcast, which I got to be a guest on a while back. And yeah, I'd love to come back on with you and really go any direction we want to go. But it's called the Unslaved Show, the Unslaved Podcast Show. Please let us know where to go for that. I think it's unslaved.com, right?
Yeah, unslaved.com. My blog is on there.
Okay, right.
And links to other things. We have a premium section. My computer blew up. I've filmed the finish of an idealism series that I'm doing. It's all complete and filmed and everything. It's just not edited yet because computer went down. And a catastrophism, a fantastic program I've got for the premium members coming and more during the year. Mm-hmm. And then we got our weekly podcast, me and David.
Yeah.
So yeah, just come over there and you'll see some amazing stuff that we're doing. Again, it's top drawer stuff, so it's not for everyone.
Yeah, it is. It's long form, which I appreciate. Just kind of like this is organically, but like you said, like all your stuff is very structured. It's very methodical. It's not rigid. It's just like it's very structured and very clearly intended on topics that require a lot of extrapolation and excavation, which again is why I really appreciate you. I feel like you're an archaeologist of history, an archaeologist of rethinking reality. And that's something I just greatly appreciate you for. And just thank you so much for taking the time for caring for the time to be here with all of us today.
Well, I've loved this conversation. And again, it inspires me. It gets things clarified, gets it a little bit more embossed, so that you can stay relevant. It is important to stay relevant with what's going on, but it's also important to stay, like you said, in the larger picture of why you exist, what you're doing here. You should never lose sight of that, because then the forces of evil in the world, yeah, they'll win. They'll have complete dominance over your psyche. But Ronnie, mate, thanks a lot. We'll do it again.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in once again. And make what you will with this information. Hopefully, make it part of your life and be practical. Be centered, be grounded, focus on your immediate reality during these times and all times. And the world out there is going to be the world out there. But one thing you can't control is the world in there. And I think that's the point of all this. So much love and aloha to everybody. And we're in this together. We're going to move through this. And I do believe, just as a final note, I do believe what we're moving into is a better world full of more opportunity and more freedom than ever. Don't know how we're going to get there. Don't know what's going to happen. But I do think that is the ultimate conclusion of all this. We'll see if we're right. Anyways, much love, everyone. Take care.